Hey gang, Bill Seneca here. This is for AFD 232 Design 2, in which we will be doing some three-dimensional modeling here based on our character design project. Now you'll see that I've got my little guy here. He's a seagull. I'm trying to find the drawing that I made of him, but I cannot. So I'm going to just show you some additional steps. And the entire process, I've already showed you how to use the OD stick to attach the various parts to the spinal column, and of course the wire armature. You guys know about that. So what I'm going to do is continue to bulk out the body just by adding additional aluminum foil. Now you can, if you want. This is a little bit more expensive, but this is craft mesh. And it's essentially a wire mesh, which I've got folded up here. And it's sharp, so be careful of the edges. You can actually kind of use this to mold it around the character. I'm not going to use it in this case. I've even used it to do body repair for my car. It works. So what we have here is our little seagull guy. I haven't given him a name yet. So let's just proceed with building up the foil, and I put it on in layers. This is kind of old foil, it's kind of beaten up, so I'm just going to wrap it around as best I can. So the idea of the foil is to bulk out the body, the legs to some extent. And it's not working all that well, is it? So it's just a matter of bulking it, kind of jamming it on there. I want this guy to have kind of a pear-shaped look. Interesting how the older stuff is not that effective. It's kind of brittle. This has been kicking around in my one of my supply bags for about a year. So it's getting there. Notice I've also got some of the caps from Steam Whistle. Let's see how that works. Oh, this seems a little bit more pliable. I want to build up the character. I also wanted a kind of a pointy tail on it too, and I don't know what happened to the spine. I mean, there's the spine there. I thought I had kind of stuck a tail up down there, but I guess I did not. So that can be developed with the bulking of the aluminum foil and the clay. And I'm just going to continue doing that. That's not very good stuff. I like the Steam Whistle ones. They seem to work quite nicely. I do also want to make that head a bit bigger. So I've bulked this guy out enough, I think, so that I can put some clay on top of him. And you can see how I've got the figure pretty much the way I want it. I may have to bulk out his butt a little bit, and around the beak I do want to probably make his head a little bit bigger just to give him a cuter look. But I think we're just about ready for our clay. One thing you can do when you're trying to apply the foil and it's a little bit brittle, I guess you could say. There are various glues out there you could probably use, such as that the Bond glue, I believe it's called, maybe not. I'll have to check that. But Pro Bond, I believe, is made by the Sculpey people, and you can apply it in layers, and then while it's still wet, of course, you can form it with your fingers. And from time to time, what I'll also use is my good old pair of needle nose pliers, and I'll just kind of squeeze. I want that neck a little bit thinner, so I'll use the strength and pressure of a good pair of pliers just to squeeze that a little bit. But you can see how some layers of the foil are just kind of, they're peeling off. But you know what? It's going to be fine once I put the clay on that. I'm using Super Sculpey for this. There are a number of different formulations you can get. This one seems to be one of the better ones, from what I understand, but I've used the original Sculpey before, and it seemed to work fine, but this is new for me. So one thing you need to consider when this is coming out of the box is that especially if it's been sitting around either in your studio or your bedroom or in a store, this stuff is fairly stiff, and it needs conditioning. You can see how it kind of breaks off there. So I've already played with some of it here, and I've got it conditioned. You can see that it's a lot softer. And this is ready to basically cut up and apply to my model here. There he is. But I want to show you how to condition this. Now, some people will actually get a pasta maker. I'm not sure how much a pasta maker costs, but I don't have one handy. However, I do have a whole bunch of these kicking around for some reason. Use a bottle. A wine bottle is fine. You'll see that this stuff is very hard to condition with your hands. It takes a while. The warmth of your hands will actually affect how easy it tends to soften up. Here's what I'm going to do. And I just took that chunk out of the box, and I'm going to try to put it together with this one. Notice I'm using a piece of paper on here, and also here's another piece that I rolled out, and look how nice and flexible that is now. So let's do this. Maybe what I'll do is get another piece of paper here. Maybe not. I don't have time. So you take your Jackson Triggs bottle or whatever wine or beverage of choice, and you start to roll it out. Now, there goes my camera. If you happen to have an actual rolling pin, even better, but let's try to flatten that out. This makes it a lot easier than just using your hands. Let's pull out a bit here. I don't know if you can see that all that well, but like I say, the warmth of your hands will help it. You can see it's breaking up. It's quite brittle after sitting in a box unhandled for so long. And you can go in there and squeeze and knead with your hands as well. It'll help to soften it up a bit. It will blend it all together. And these little pieces keep falling off. You notice that this is a polymer. I assume there's some kind of solvent in there, and I'm just using a manila folder just so I don't pick up all the dirt from my desk here. So I'm going to gradually knead that, add that 98.1 temperature to the clay, and get it softened up so I can manipulate it. And I can feel it softening up. It's getting there. Let's pick up some of that stuff, get my bottle, roll it out. Now, I don't know if your mom or your grandmother, or if your dad's a baker, I don't know if they'd mind if you'd use their roller. I would kind of avoid that, probably because there is some kind of plastic in this stuff. I mean, that's why they call it polymer. What do we got? See how it's working nicely. So it's gradually becoming more workable. Now I'll fold that over. It's still a bit brittle. Let's keep folding it back and forth. Let's keep putting the warmth on it. Now, I don't recommend putting too much warmth on it because that's what cures this stuff. You put it in the oven. Of course, it has to come up to 275 degrees, I believe, for a certain amount of time. And this is actually quite strenuous. I'm starting to breathe heavily here. All right. Come on. Roll it out. I think you get the idea. All right, so before I collapse, look at that. Look at that. It's coming along, still a bit brittle, but let's get it moving here. Anyway, as I said, I believe you get the idea of how to do this. Kneading, manipulation. I've only spent a couple of minutes on it. Then why, Bill, are you out of breath? And we'll cut, and I'll show you the next step. I mean, look at that. Look at that. A few rolls with a wine bottle or a rolling pin, if you have one. And look at that. It's now pliable. It's flexible. I might give it a little bit more conditioning just to make sure that we don't get cracks and stuff, but it's virtually ready for applying to the model. So you'll notice that I've made sort of a sumo costume for this guy. Wrapped clay around the lower belly and then wrapped another clay strip crosswise to it. And you can see what I'm doing here. I can squeeze that together so it closes over the foil and sort of puts the legs together, if you know what I mean. I'm closing those gaps. And I can smooth that later. I can squeeze that a little bit further, get the foil covered. I did the same thing on the other side. It's needs a little bit of work, but that's basically what I'm doing, just to put it all together. I can continue squeezing and smoothing this, and I'll go over it later with either the odorless spirits or the good. Oops! Whoa! Look! Earthquake! Earthquake! Hate when that happens. The isopropyl rubbing alcohol is great for smoothing polymer clays. And we'll get that smoothed over, and I will just continue wrapping this guy with clay. Whoops, there we go, another earthquake. Oh, Jesus. And we've got this guy pretty much covered up, except for the arms and legs. I got to figure out what I'm going to do for the feet. I may have to build it up with plumber's epoxy and then cover that with aluminum foil and clay, of course, to create the feet. Now, I noticed that my character's neck isn't quite as long as I wanted, but what the heck? I think it's going to do for the time being. I've got one more little piece left here, and unfortunately I'm losing my light. It's a little bit later in the afternoon, but what I'm going to do is place that last patch on there, and I've been finding that these plastic tools are pretty good. So I've placed that one last patch on there to cover them up. I can spread it out with my fingers, but I found that this little knobby thing here, I don't know, can you guys see that? We've lost a lot of light, but these are great for just kind of blending and flattening. I'm pretty much acting the same way as your thumb and your fingers. I can spread that out. I can get it to join, and what I'm going to do is actually try a little bit of good old rubbing alcohol. I'm going to put a little bit on there. Hopefully not spill it. So this does help smooth things out. Where's the one I'm using? I want this one. So let's continue to rub that out, so to speak, and it blends into the existing Sculpey quite nicely. Now you can buy a type of compound that is essentially rubbing alcohol. Of course, it costs a lot more if it's coming from the people that manufacture Sculpey, but this works just fine. You need to add to it just to keep things smoothed out. But there we have it. This guy's got most of his body covered. I still obviously have to do the arms and the legs, and I have to figure this out. So we'll do that next time. And you can see how relatively smooth this character is at the moment. I'd like to make some improvements on him, but he's pretty much covered, and I'm almost at a point where I can start with the detailed instruments. But what I'm going to do is cover up his hands and arms, legs, and so forth, and build that up. And I want to do something with the head and forehead. I'm thinking of possibly giving him, a Wallace and Gromit look with the big brow ridge and dropping some eyes in there. Now, you'll notice that in the sketch, this guy has flying goggles and a helmet. So that's going to be an interesting conundrum, which we'll definitely find a solution to. Anyway, that's it for now. We're getting there. And I may want to put a tail in there, which means another additional piece of wire or maybe a piece of bamboo. Apparently bamboo does not burn that easily. So when I bake it, I don't want this guy suddenly bursting into flames like a kamikaze pilot. I mean, he is a pilot, right? But he's a seagull. He's a flyer. Let's put it that way. Anyway, you see where we are? I'll come back at a later date and we will continue working on our sculptures. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.